Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lydia Joy, and I just want to wish you all a happy Scorpio season. Today is the first day of Scorpio season as I record this. I hope you all soaked in some of that balancing Libra new moon energy that we had yesterday. I certainly did. It has been a great season, a lot of relationship and balance, energy themes, things to work on in my life. This past Sunday, I got to spend the day with some old friends from my bonfire group back in Berks County, PA. I was talking a lot about that back in 2022 and 2023 and those old episodes. Maybe if you've stuck with me long enough, you recall some of those. But it was at my friend Pete's farm, and it just felt like a reunion of sorts with all these folks that I hadn't seen in a while. A lot of reconnection, laughter, nature, warmth, the kind of day that just like fills you up on so many levels. And one of the guys from the group, his name is Matt, he started this small side business called Good Havens. And he hosted a sauna and cold plunge experience at Pete's farm. Pete's farm is Eat Mo Greens, by the way, in Berks County, PA, for anyone interested. So you can picture this. It's like a cozy sauna tent, had this awesome little wood stove inside, seats for was supposed to fit 12, but we fit at 9 in there cozily. And there were 2 cold plunge tubs waiting nearby that you could get in if you chose to after you would get out of a sauna session. There was a lovely little fire pit nearby, a lovely food spread, charcuterie boards, fruit, warm tea, 2 big jugs of water set out, which were spring water, and the second spring water jug had, he put the LMNT packets in so people could, replenish after the sauna. It was sunny, the air was crisp, it was windy. Oh, it was just lovely, and the energy was just right. So it was a really nourishing day, the kind that just fills you up. And because I'm the resident mineral nerd in the group, people were asking me all kinds of questions about minerals. It came up in conversation many times. And it's always fun to geek out about this stuff, but it's hard to really explain things in a casual social setting without context. And what struck me was, just this reminder of how we are using electrolyte packets and electrolytes these days without understanding the deeper nuance, right? Like, grabbing an LMT packet or using them as your quote electrolytes, or thinking like, cool, I've covered my electrolyte needs. I take an LMNT packet every day, right? Like, without realize, and there's so many others, by the way, on the market, like besides that one. That's just a big popularized one that most people know about. That's why I'm using it, and that's what we used on Sunday. There's so many out there, right? And they're all, a lot of them are just either like salt or, they have different things in them. And I'm just like, really it's a small piece of a much bigger picture. And, I actually had to call that out this week on Instagram because it's such a common misconception. So as I was listening to conversations that day, people talking about challenges they were facing and even connecting to things, to their astrology charts, I couldn't help but think, wow, there's definite physiology going on behind the scenes here, right? Quite frankly, if we were all properly charged with the right balance of minerals, like namely, I'm kind of going to be talking about sodium, potassium, and magnesium today, but other minerals too. I think a lot of us would be having very different conversations about our lives, our focus, and even our emotions. So in this episode, I'm not just talking about the art of the sauna. Um, the experience was just what sparked this reflection. But what I really want to dive into is why, you know, a little salt and water isn't always enough, when it helps, when it doesn't, how your individual mineral balance shapes everything from headaches after a sauna sweat session to whether or not your brain can stay focused. And if you've ever blamed your astrology chart for why you struggle in life, stick with me here. I think what I'm about to share might actually be hopefully more grounding, a little more freeing. So, to start us off, when we talk about the sauna, I want to split this conversation into two sides for a second. We're going to talk about demand and supply. Demand, what the body is doing in the sauna, what is being demanded of the body in the sauna, right? A sauna session is far more than just sweating it out or a healthy thing you do, right? It's an active physiological event, right? The circulation increases, the hypothalamus signals your sweat glands to move fluids to the skin. Your heart and muscles work harder to maintain temperature regulation. The liver and kidneys shift to manage increased circulation and detox load. And all of that costs energy. And along with that energy cost comes electrolyte loss. Okay, so we know sweat contains minerals, right? It contains sodium, potassium, chloride, and measurable amounts of magnesium, calcium, and as research shows, there's even other trace minerals, right? And there's a caveat here because which and how much of those trace minerals you might lose in a sauna session or from regular sweating, it's going to vary. It's going to vary from person to person, the season, your diet, the amount of toxins you have. It's not a one size fits all picture, right? We do have some broad enough information to have a jumping off point, which is why people are using these salt packets, but it's not enough, right? So the demand is real. Heat increases the need for minerals and ATP because your body is actively moving fluids and driving pumps to cool and detoxify. Now, the supply is whether your body can meet the demand. So if you think about the supply side, it's like, can your body actually make the energy and sustain mineral balance while it's being asked to do all that work? So that's where the individual biology matters, right? Now, there are two big pieces that can control your supply. So energy production in general. We can talk about ATP. Uh, every sodium potassium pump runs on ATP, right? So this pump is constantly pushing sodium out, potassium in to keep each cell electrically charged. So if the mitochondrial function or the ATP recycling is limited, that pump slows down. And under heat stress, your cells are asking for more energy production, more ATP. And if production can't keep up, cellular voltage drops. And then the body starts signaling fatigue or stress, or maybe you feel agitated, or maybe you feel dizzy, right? And then the second piece that controls supply is your mineral cofactors, your methylation support. So minerals, we've got a lot of them, right? Magnesium, right? Copper, zinc, manganese, all of these, along with the methylation and detoxification pathways, because these are this is like the biochemical machinery that helps us make and recycle ATP. So when I say methylation, I mean the whole process of creating and donating methyl groups, not your specific genetic mutations, although that could also play a role. But when we think about it, it's like genetics, life history, stress, nutrition, toxins, they all influence how efficiently those pathways run. So, in short, it's really just about your body's ability to supply energy, and it depends on both your current reserves and your underlying metabolic wiring. So when demand outweighs supply, if your reserves are already low, maybe you've been under chronic stress or you have had like a life like me, I've told you about, right? Or you haven't been hydrating well, or you've been, burning up your minerals faster than you've been taking them in. And maybe you've made some habit changes, or you've been busy, or you haven't been, there could be a myriad of factors, right? So the sauna could push your system beyond its current capacity. And you might feel wiped out afterwards. You might get lightheaded. You might get a headache. You might experience other symptoms that might not make sense to you entirely, right? And it's not because the sauna is bad for you. It's because your body didn't have the supply to meet the demand. And so the mismatch between like all that increased heat stress and limited resources can potentially lead to the low cellular voltage. And that's what shows up as like the fatigue, the dizziness, the sense of feeling off. And it just depends on person to person how extreme that situation is for you, like how much fatigue, dizziness, yada, yada. And I think that these effects are preventable when you approach sauna use with preparation and recovery in mind. So the bottom line nuance is right, like the sauna is a powerful hermetic tool, and it's a way to gently stress the body so it adapts and becomes stronger. But hormesis only works if your adaptive capacity is ready for it. So when your mineral reserves are low, your energy reserves, your detox pathways aren't working right, you're feeling taxed. Um, a sauna might not feel as restorative as it should be just because everyone says, oh, saunas are healthy. You're supposed to sweat, right? It could actually feel a little depleting for you. So that's why the generic advice, like, just drink a salt heavy electrolyte drink afterwards, it kind of misses the point, it misses the mark a little bit. It's a good baseline. It's good to do, but it's really not just about adding back salt, right? It's about supporting your body's total energy and mineral balance before and after the session. So here's a little practitioner caveat I have. When I'm working with clients and they are doing saunas, they have a sauna and they want to know how to approach the sauna. This is like exactly where that individual nuance matters, right? I look at their hair test. I know their whole health story. I know how they're operating in their day-to-day life, what they're doing, how stressed they really are. So I can guide them on how to prepare and recover effectively because, not everyone's system can handle the same level of heat stress right away. Some people might need to wait and just get some good mineral restoration before they even step into a sauna. For others, especially if they're going to be sweating like a lot, right? For others, it's simply about fine tuning the timing and the duration, right? Maybe they have to do shorter sessions at first. And maybe over time they can build up as their mineral reserves and their adaptive capacity improve. And there's just like more of a practical side that I, make as a caveat is just I usually have clients use my electrolyte recipe. Typically they're going to have some salt, real salt and potassium, and also make sure their magnesium intake matches their current needs. And I have them hydrate before the sauna and again after the sauna. So they're both ready for the mineral demand and replacing what's lost. So that's a very basic baseline. And that simple rhythm, prep, replenish, restore turns the sauna use into more of a supportive practice rather than another stressor on an already stressed out system. Right. So now that we've covered the physiology and how ATP and mineral supply govern your cellular charge, I want to look at how that translates to your nervous system and why even healthy stress can feel too intense if your body isn't ready. So even when something, a practice, is healthy in theory and also can be healthy in practice, right? Such as a sauna session, it can be too much current for the body to handle in that moment. Because if your nervous system, because let's go back for a second. Your nervous system is essentially that electrical wiring of your body. It relies on the same cellular charge we just talked about, right? So if ATP is low, minerals are depleted, voltage drops. And that can make your nervous system more hyperactive, unbalanced, or overstimulated. And what that feels like for many people, mineral imbalances can mimic anxiety, restlessness, wired but tired energy, right? And you might notice like irritability, a racing mind, maybe even some jitteriness, even after a short session. And it's not psychological, it's physiology kind of, I don't want to say masquerading as emotion, but like that gives you paints a picture for you. It's really a real signal that your system is running too hard without enough support. So this is where preparation and recovery become crucial, right? So again, a couple more of my go-to strategies in addition to the electrolytes to really rebalance and support you and make sure your nervous system has the voltage it needs, right? Is like if you feel that way, anxious, jitter, racy mind, headache, you know, it just depends on what's going through your system. But I like herbs. I love holy basil, lemon balm. Those are two really nice ones that most people do well with. Um, they kind of support us in this adaptogenic way to balance and calm the stress response. So, I don't know that different people like different ones. So maybe see which one you like and which one works for you and give that a try. Magnesium. So a magnesium bath, topical, right? This is going to help replenish that magnesium while helping the muscles relax. Especially if you do a sauna session and only drink like a salted electrolyte situation. Like, for example, and I'm going to get this wrong, the LMNT is primarily sodium, a little bit of magnesium, and a little bit of potassium. And if someone is running low in their magnesium reserves, they probably need more magnesium pre and post sauna. Right? Because in the hair test, I have to, balance those minerals very carefully between people so they don't throw themselves off between the three. Magnesium, salt, and potassium can be very tricky to balance sometimes. So, that's something that could be really helpful. Topical magnesium is nice too, or just, getting a little bit more magnesium into your electrolyte mix. And then if you're feeling a little weird, like maybe it's stirring your system up, your detox pathways up, you can always do something like activated charcoal because it can just help clear things out of the system. Make sure you're drinking enough and all that jazz. And then just, let yourself, settle after a high energy stimulus, let yourself relax and have downtime. The goal isn't just to like relax. It's really to recharge your system after creating controlled stress so your cells, minerals, and nervous system are all aligned. Okay, so the bottom line here is that the sauna works on multiple levels, right? That cellular demand and supply, it affects the voltage at the cell level. The voltage at the cell level directly influences how your nervous system feels. When your minerals, your ATP, your adaptive capacity are all in balance, sauna sessions leave you restored and invigorated and neurologically calm. When they're not, even this healthy habit of the sauna can feel very overwhelming. Now I want to talk about why I don't recommend relying on electrolyte packets long term. I'm not saying products like LMNT electrolyte packets, which is really just basically salt, you guys, flavored with a little bit of potassium and magnesium in there, at least on the label. But they have their place, but they are not, in my opinion, a long-term, like, ideal, right? The issue here, guys, is context, okay? These packets, yes, they're convenient. They're heavily marketed. They're widely used as like this kind of like one size fits all electrolyte solution. At least that's how people are using them. Many people. But relying on them primarily to cover your mineral needs can be misleading and incomplete, right? A lot of people are assuming that a packet of salt, like the LMNT and others, is like, I got my electrolytes. I'm good. Check the box, right? But our biology is far more complex, okay? Minerals like sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and all the trace minerals elements, they interact in a very delicate balance. So if you supplement without understanding your current mineral status, metabolic adaptations, all your, detox bottlenecks, which I've talked about in past episodes, even your genetic variations, you risk leaving gaps or even creating imbalances elsewhere. The electrolyte packets, namely the salt-based ones, were initially designed for heavy sweat sessions or post-workout replacement. And I think that use can be okay. right? Like, I get it. I get why they exist, but, daily resilience as a blanket solution for overall mineral health is not ideal, right? We have all kinds of things going on in the modern world. We have magnesium deficiencies and excess need for it because of the modern lifestyle. Things have happened to our genetics more rapidly over the past multiple decades. So many people have mutations that are playing a role in all their pathways and how they function. We have people on medications with history of medications, stress using up your minerals more than you even realize. And there's a whole big long conversation we can have about that, right? Your lifestyle, it all really affects your mineral needs very dramatically, quite frankly, in many cases. So, you know, a simple packet like that absolutely cannot address that nuance. It is a nice start for us to understand our need to get more salt than we thought because we were all lied to about salt for so long. So, yes, great. And let's dig in more than just that, okay? And, the bigger picture is that the electrolyte packets that we are all finding in stores and whatnot, they're not the same as true mineral restoration and repair, right? We know that electrolytes are these ions, the sodium, the potassium, magnesium, calcium, chloride. They conduct the electricity in our body. They help regulate the nerve impulses, the muscle contractions. They help us actually get hydrated. They help us have that cellular charge voltage, our spark to run our processes. But the balance matters, right? So if, let's say, people are getting these without enough potassium, right? These salt packets or enough magnesium, and they're not doing anything else about those other minerals, right? That can throw you off. You want to think of rebuilding charge, I don't know, maybe kind of like an conducting an orchestra, right? We've got sodium, it's just one instrument. Potassium's another, calcium's another, trace minerals are the rest, right? Magnesium's more like the orchestra conductor of like kind of keeping them all in sync. If you think of only one without the others, the symphony's incomplete, right? And it won't be a symphony, right? It's like completely not at all even a symphony. It's like a solo, right? And that doesn't work so great inside your body, and your body notices, right? So the true recovery and resilience require supporting the full mineral orchestra, not just that quick hit of sodium because you lost some salt in your sweat, right? Um so individual variation matters, all that jazz. Like I just talked about, your genetics, your stress, your diet, your detox capacity, medications. All of that changes how your body uses minerals. And depth matters, So rebuilding true mineral reserves, it can support your enzymes, your nervous system tone, even your how you repair your muscles or build your muscles, your long-term energy, how you stay healthy, right? It's not just this like short-term hydration situation. Okay. Yes, electrolyte packets can play a role. They're not a solid enough foundation without further nuance, right? So, and as a functional nutritionist, I care deeply about that, right? That's why I think personalized foundational approaches always outperform trendy one size fits all hacks, right? Because mineral health isn't just, well, it's becoming trendy, but it really isn't trendy. It's timeless. It's foundational. And your body deserves more than a packet of salt. So let's keep going. Now, at a group event like this, people naturally start talking about their lives, their challenges, their routines, their health. Right. With a few astrology geeks in the mix, our conversation inevitably drifted towards birth charts and aspects and struggles, which is really fun. But what struck me was how often these challenges, whether it's like, I'm too much of a this sign and not enough of a that sign, and I don't have good emotional regulation, or I'm too emotional, or I can't plan or focus, or whatever people are saying, right? It can actually be traced back to something very physiological, which is your cellular charge, which we could also determine to some degree your needs from your birth chart too. which we'll talk more about the cell salts, tissue salts in another episode. But here's the link, right? Voltage in your cells matters for executive function. When your sodium potassium pumps aren't operating optimally because ATP is on low or your mineral reserves are depleted, your cells lose their electrical charge, okay? That cellular charge isn't just some nerdy metric or word or term. It literally affects how your brain communicates with itself. So when you have low cellular voltage, it can show up as like brain fog or scattered thoughts or difficulty planning or prioritizing tasks or emotional looping, overreacting, or getting like stuck in a stress response. Like you could feel like you're running on adrenaline, or conversely, like you've frozen up and can't move forward. So it's not just like my chart or willpower. Like these things aren't the actual real issue. Your body and brain literally don't have enough on board, uh, mineral wise, to have the charge that you need to execute the plan you're trying to make or whatever it may be, right? So this is kind of where the astrology reflection comes in. Like, we can't talk about your chart, your traits, your potential, or we can actually, but if we don't talk about this cellular voltage and, consider that it might currently be too low to hold, right? Like you don't have enough, you're not going to be able to fully embody your chart, your birth chart, and a healthy version of it, right? The planets might be aligned perfectly or whatever we want to say, right? Like they might be having a sextile or they might be beneficial or whatever. Um, or they might not be. They might have antagonistic impacts against each other. You might have, a ton of one planets in one place and not enough of another type of energy. Like for me, for example, I have a lot of fire and earth, not a lot of water. Right? So what does that mean? We can go into that in another episode. But the point is we have these differences in our charts, right? And when we learn about astrology, we can say, wow, I have a lot of this and not a lot of that, and this affects this, and da 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 da, right? And but but the bottom line is we can still support all of that, whatever patterning we have, to optimize how we live our lives, right? Because it requires sufficient minerals in a you know organized fashion for you as you are right now. Energy, bioelectrical coherence, your brain and body can't translate all the potential you have, even within your birth chart, into action, right? So I hope that made sense. That felt like it came out a little clunky, but I hope you guys are tracking with me. So supporting these little sodium potassium pumps in your body by getting those, minerals in the right amount and order and all that jazz, right? Ensuring you're getting adequate minerals and giving your cells that ATP they need. It isn't just about feeling physically well. It's about creating the capacity to think clearly, plan effectively, respond adaptively, embody your birth chart, right? And I think that's why paying attention to electrolytes, mineral balance, and energy production is not just like a small little detail that we should just like be flip about and say, here, take this little packet. It's very foundational to your everyday executive function and your emotional resilience. So this experience reminded me once again that wellness is deeply personal. Our bodies can seem fragile to us, right? But really, they're just communicating. So when something feels off and you feel like you have a pattern and you want to figure out why you have the pattern, and maybe you blame the pattern on something like your birth chart, it's not like you have this horrible failure within you. It's really always feedback. And it's a chance to kind of notice that about yourself. Even like how you pace yourself throughout your life, and how you prepare. And, it's an opportunity to meet you and support yourself better always. And I just want to say that the mineral piece of this is really important because when we're properly charged, um, all these things show up more efficiently. Our nervous system, our executive function, how we plan, how we have emotional regulation, right? This is such a foundation because it supports physical vitality, but it also supports our psychosocial, emotional, spiritual growth, like how we relate with every aspect of our lives. And it enhances our ability to embody and express the potential outlined in our astrological birth charts, which I think is really freaking awesome. So, bottom line, a sauna, any wellness practice, really, you guys, is never one size fits all. I know you know this intellectually, but you know how we just kind of we just lump things into a thing and then just sort of like dismiss stuff? Right? Because like a lot of times there could be like instructions going into a sauna. If you're generally healthy, there's nothing to worry about. And that sounds simple, but it kind of can be misleading, right? Like what does generally healthy even mean these days? Right? Because everyone I've ever talked to carries some level of imbalance. And, knowing how your body really works can make all the difference, especially if you do plan to do saunas more frequently. Or if you step into more intense events like the one I just went to, because it was like hours we were doing this. And if your body's not used to it, it's nice to have some prep ahead and care during and after, right? So I think, we can approach wellness practices as experiments and listening to your body, right? Understanding your physiology, like what happens when you do a sauna, right? Like it's telling you something if you have side effects, right? That way you can support your individual needs better because it's probably not just affecting you in a sauna. It's probably affecting you more than that in other ways of your life. Anyways, I found it all fascinating. I wanted to come on and share these thoughts with you about this specific topic because it is a pretty important one and how it impacts us in all aspects of our life. And if you are somebody who wants to go deeper and needs more support on your health journey, this is the level of nuance I explore with my clients. I do have a couple of openings currently if you're interested in working together. So check out how you can do that in the show notes below. I have 2 packages, my minerals and microbes and my Rewilded Wellness coaching package. You can also learn more about my Mineral Foundations course in the show notes, which lays out the most important groundwork for your mineral journey. So you can pay what you value starting at $33. It's a good foundation that most people kind of just, don't really have laid down properly. So the takeaway here is really being informed can transform your experience, not just in a one-time event, but throughout your day-to-day life. Knowing how to prepare and replenish and recover as well allows your body to just benefit fully from practices like saunas. So you can just feel energized, supported, in control of your own wellness. All right, guys. Well, I hope you found this episode helpful, supportive, got some really good takeaways out of it. I will be back with you very soon to share more. Until then, stay wild and stay well.